Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and a growing number of Democrats are calling on New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez to resign after he and his wife were indicted Friday on bribery charges. Congressmember Andy Kim announced Saturday he'll run for Menendez's Senate seat. Federal prosecutors accuse Menendez of accepting bribes in exchange for using his position to increase U.S. assistance to Egypt and to do favors for New Jersey businessmen.
Senator Menendez allegedly provided sensitive, non-public U.S. government information to Egyptian officials and otherwise took steps to secretly aid the government of Egypt. We also allege that Senator Menendez improperly pressured a senior official at the U.S. Department of Agriculture to protect a lucrative monopoly that the government of Egypt had awarded to Hana, a lucrative monopoly that Hana then used to fund certain bribe payments.
Bribes included a Mercedes-Benz, mortgage payments, gold bars, and over $500,000 in cash stashed throughout the house. It's the second time Menendez has been charged with corruption. Menendez stepped down as chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's holding a press conference today. We'll have more on the story later in the broadcast. The Writers Guild of America has reached what union leaders are calling an exceptional tentative deal on a new contract with Hollywood studios and streaming services after a historic 146-day strike. The settlement follows stepped-up negotiations over the past week between the WGA and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, capping months of stalled talks over compensation, residuals, and protections against artificial intelligence. The writers' breakthrough could give momentum to talks between SAG-AFTRA and Hollywood studios to end a strike by actors who walked off the job in July. In other labor news, President Biden will walk the picket line with United Auto Workers in Michigan Tuesday. It's believed to be the first time a sitting president has joined strikers on the picket line. This comes as the union announced Friday an expansion of its strike to 38 locations in 20 states. The new work stoppages target GM and Stellantis after the UAW acknowledged real progress in talks with Ford. French President Emmanuel Macron announced Sunday France will withdraw its troops and ambassador from Niger 2 months after a military coup that overthrew President Mohamed Bazoum. It's another setback for France's waning presence in the Sahel region, where its decades-long counterterrorism efforts have largely failed or worsened insecurity. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, all former French colonies, have seen military coups in recent years, formed a mutual defense pact earlier this month to combat against armed interventions. In Somalia, at least 21 people were killed and more than 50 others wounded Saturday as a truck loaded with explosives sped through a security checkpoint and detonated in a residential neighborhood of the central Somali town of Beledweyne. The blast reduced buildings and shops to rubble. No one's claimed responsibility, though the al-Shabaab armed group has been active in the area. The attack came one day before U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed in Djibouti, where Austin praised Somalia's military for what he called its impressive progress in the fight against al-Shabaab. Austin is in Nairobi, Kenya today and will visit Angola later in the week. In Ghana, hundreds of people took to the streets for 3 days of anti-government protests as anger mounts over skyrocketing living costs and unemployment.
The average Ghanaian can't afford a 3 square meal. This is very, very dangerous to the whole country. We have cases among the age of 14, 15, who are now taking people's belongings just to survive. The government that doesn't care, are just selling money. And the average Ghanaian can't do nothing, but their time is up. We are here and we will fight. If no one cares, the youth cares. And when the youth cares, then the country must care.
It's the worst economic crisis to hit Ghana in years, triggered by the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and rising debt to the International Monetary Fund after Ghana's government agreed to a $3 billion loan. At least 49 people were arrested in the capital Accra Thursday as police blocked protesters from storming the presidential palace. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli soldiers killed 2 Palestinians during a military raid on a refugee camp in the city of Tulkarem. This is the brother of 32-year-old Abdurrahman Abu Daqash, killed by Israeli forces Sunday.
First of all, I was with my brother here. He went up to the rooftop to film the ambulances. He barely had a chance to look, and a sniper targeted him. He has nothing to do with it. He has children, and his wife is about to give birth. He had nothing to do with it, and he was unarmed.
The latest violence in the West Bank came as Israel's military launched more airstrikes on the Gaza Strip over the weekend, as Palestinians continue to protest Israel shutting down the Beit Hanun crossing, the only operational crossing for Gazans to enter Israel, including some 18,000 Palestinians who work in Israel. Canada's House Speaker, Anthony Rota, has apologized for leading a standing ovation for a 98-year-old Ukrainian veteran who fought alongside the Nazis. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was at the Canadian Parliament to deliver an address to the lawmakers, joined in on the applause, along with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's not clear if Zelensky, who is Jewish, knew that Yaroslav Hunka was a member of SS Galashina, which was found to be responsible for the persecution and extermination of Jews during the Nuremberg trials. Zelensky has previously spoken out against the Nazi unit. In more news from Canada, the New York Times is reporting U.S. spies provided information to the Canadian government that helped lead to the claim India was directly involved in the June killing of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Niger in British Columbia. But the Times says Ottawa's own surveillance of Indian diplomats in Canada provided the most definitive evidence to support its accusation, which India has rejected. Following Niger's assassination, the FBI warned Sikh activists in the United States of possible death threats. Thousands of ethnic Armenians are fleeing the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh following Azerbaijan's 24-hour military operation last week, which seized control of the disputed territory from Armenian separatist forces. One survivor said shelling by Azerbaijani forces on his village left dozens of civilians dead.
We barely survived the last days. It was scary. There was shelling from all sides. There were dead bodies. I don't know where they are now. 2 refrigerated trucks filled with bodies to the top, and there's no place to even bury them. Out of 500 residents in my settlement, only 40 managed to get out. Everyone else stayed. They are at the airport and in the city, in different places, and they are waiting to be evacuated.
Over the weekend, Armenia asked the United Nations for help monitoring the rights of ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia's prime minister said he needed guarantees from Azerbaijan that civilians would be protected.
Unless real living conditions are created for the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh in their homes and effective mechanisms of protection from ethnic cleansing, then the likelihood that the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh will see exile from their homeland as the only way to preserve their lives and identity increases significantly.
Meanwhile, protesters in Armenia continue to demand the prime minister resign for failing to support Armenian separatists in Nagorno-Karabakh. In Kosovo, ethnic Serb gunmen in armored vehicles ambushed a police patrol and stormed a monastery near the border with Serbia Sunday, beginning a chaotic day of violence that ended with at least 4 people killed. Many of the gunmen escaped. Kosovo's Prime Minister, Albin Kurti, accused Serbia's government of financing and motivating the attackers. Kosovo declared independence in 2008, but the Serbian government does not recognize its sovereignty. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić blamed Prime Minister Kurti for provoking the assailants.
He left Kosovo Serbs to worry about their future, and all the time he kept provoking them. I regret that some Serbs succumbed to the provocations. Albin Kurti is the only one to blame. Albin Kurti is the only one who wants conflict and war. No other man wants conflict and war besides him. His life's desire is to drag us into war with NATO.
In Nebraska, a woman who pleaded guilty to helping her 17-year-old daughter obtain abortion pills, then helping her dispose of the fetus, was sentenced to 2 years in prison Friday. Jessica Burgess admitted in July to helping with the abortion when her daughter Celeste was 29 weeks pregnant in April 2022. At the time, Nebraska still allowed abortions up to 20 weeks. Celeste Burgess had already received a 90-day sentence after taking a plea deal and was released from jail in early September. And Pope Francis is calling for international action to stop the drowning of refugees as they attempt to reach European shores. During his visit to Marseille, France, Pope Francis said the Mediterranean Sea, quote, has become a huge cemetery where many brothers and sisters are deprived even of the right to a grave.
We should not get used to seeing disasters at sea as mere news stories and those dying at sea as numbers. No, they have names, faces, and stories. They are broken lives and shattered dreams.
The UN has recorded some 25,000 drownings in the Mediterranean since 2014, though the true death toll is likely much higher. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.